Today is episode 2 of our How to Wire Your Car or Truck series. And we're going to show you how to wire up a couple different circuits, mainly focusing on the ignition circuit. Sounds pretty straightforward, but there's a lot of different ignitions to cover. Anything from a key switch with a GM HEI distributor, a point style distributor, an EFI or LS style engine like I have here, to probably the most intuitive and amazing push button start system I've ever seen. If that sounds interesting to you, stick around. This video is proudly sponsored by Dawg, the world leader in keyless technology, specializing in push-button start systems, proudly made in the USA. What's up, guys, and welcome back to In the Shop TV. My name is Mike, and if you just joined us for the first time, this here is my 1955 Chevy truck that we've been working on for a little over a year and a half now. In the last episode, we started wiring this truck up, and we focused a lot on mapping out your electric and how we install the actual harness into the vehicle and laying out all the circuits where they need to go so that you have a better understanding of how to wire the whole vehicle in its entirety. If you haven't seen that video, I strongly urge you to go back and watch that. It's really imperative, and it's gonna make the rest of the videos in this video series seem much more simple and easy to follow and understand. Really, guys, I'm not trying to get views by having you watch an older video. I'm telling you, it's really gonna benefit you. So if you haven't checked that video out, go back one video and give it a watch. It's really gonna help with this. All right, so we're gonna cover a couple different circuits today, but really with a focus on the ignition circuit. And there's kind of a lot to go over because not everyone is using the same type of ignition. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna show you how to wire a basic key switch, but we'll also show you how that key switch integrates based on whether you have an HEI type distributor or an old point style distributor. We're gonna touch a little bit on the LS engine that I have here, an EFI, and how that integrates with it. Then we'll go over the push button start that I've selected for this vehicle. It's a system by Dawg, and it's what I believe to be probably the most intuitive and amazing push button start system that I've encountered outside of a factory luxury vehicle. All right, so that's our key switch hole right there, and coming out of it, we have our ignition wire bundle. So missing from that bundle is the purple wire that goes to your starter, which they do include in the Speedway harness kit. It's in a separate bag with those power wires for your harness. Looks like this, has a little ring terminal on the end, and I got a cut end over there. Now I've already got a hole in the firewall with a grommet in it that I predetermined for the starter wire. I'm just gonna snake it through, leaving the ring terminal on this end. I'm gonna leave enough slack to hook up to our starter. I'm going in from this way, obviously, because the ring terminal is already terminated on that end, and also so I can sneak it over the transmission hump and not catch the header, kind of tuck in behind them on this side. I apologize for the close quarter view. See it right there hooked up, out of the way of the header. Now I'll just pull the slack through and bundle up in the dash. Okay, we successfully added the starter wire to our ignition bundle right here. It's important to note though, if you're using a neutral safety switch, they actually give you a second purple wire, and that's gonna go in between the starter and your ignition switch. Now in a standard GM old style ignition, you've got every wire that you need here to complete your ignition, but you'll notice we have 2 brown wires when we only really need 1. This second one is or is not applicable to you if you're running an alternator that has this terminal end on it. You'd actually get rid of it by sneaking it through this hole and running it directly to your alternator through the firewall. We're not using it because we're running an LS engine. To provide a little more context, if you're wondering what that wire is for, it's for your idiot light or your warning light on your dashboard if you have alternator problems. So again, we're not using that. We have an LS powered engine. Everything's done through that ECM. So we're just gonna kind of cut it off and tape it and leave it behind there. If you're using the old carbureted engine and you have that idiot light on your dash and you have that plug on your alternator, you would just plug that into your alternator and then you'd be all set for your dash light. So what we have here for our purposes are the standard pink, brown, red, and purple wires for our GM keyed ignition. All right, so we're gonna break down wiring this into a couple different segments depending on what kind of ignition that you're using. But before we get to that, I just wanna go over each wire again so everyone understands exactly what they do. Your brown wire is your accessory wire, which powers your accessories. Purple wire, we know we just hooked it up to our starter. The red wire is your main power feed, or 12-volt constant coming from your battery or from your fuse terminal. And the pink wire is gonna go to your switched ignition. Now let's talk about the other end of this. What that pink wire does when it comes out of your ignition is it hits the fuse terminal and it powers everything in that fuse terminal that is gonna be switched 12-volt ignition, not 12-volt constant. After that pink switched ignition wire comes out of the fuse terminal, it goes into that engine bay harness that we have set aside, which is tucked over here in our A column, tucked away for later use. Once it's in the engine bay, if you're using an old style GM HEI distributor, you would connect that pink wire to the battery side of it. Or if you're using an older point style distributor, you would hook up that pink initial wire to the ballast resistor. Just make sure if you have an LS engine like I do and you're leaving it taped up in that bundle, that the end of it where it's kind of pre-spliced a little bit, you make sure that it's taped so that when you hit switch ignition, it's not touching the body or anything where it can ground out. All right, so for display purposes, let's say you're running a key switch, which is notated here in the instruction manual. You have your 4 wires coming up out of the dash, your pink, your red, your brown, and your purple. What you're doing is running your red wire to the battery terminal of your key switch. You're running your pink wire, which we just spoke about, to the ignition terminal on your key switch. The brown goes to ACC or accessory, and the purple, as we spoke about, goes to your starter, or it can hit the neutral safety switch if you're using one. All right, so now that we demonstrated how easy this was to hook up to a key switch, I'm gonna go ahead and cut all my leads off. Now we're going to strip back the insulation and get ready to install this to our digital guard dog harness. All right, so we covered a lot of different key switch configurations. I want to focus now on what we're installing here. This is a keyless ignition and push button start system provided by the good folks at Digital Guard Dog. Guys, this is an amazing system and we'll get kind of in depth to it and show you what it comes with and how it all works. But I want to stress one thing. If you're going to install push button start, the market is flooded with these types of things. If you go on your eBays and your Amazon, you can find tons of those systems for like 37 bucks. I'm a huge proponent of saving money and being budget minded. Not when it comes to ignition, guys. A lot of these push button start systems rely on integral relays and PCB technology, meaning printed circuit boards inside. The last thing you want to do is have any of that crap out because of cheap connections, cheap engineering and all that stuff, and you can't get into your vehicle, you can't start your vehicle, and down the rabbit hole we go from there. Don't cheap out when it comes to a push button start. So before we start installing all this, I'm gonna crack into this box and give you guys an in-depth look at what they sent us and how it all works, as well as some other cool products that they offer. So they sent us 2 different boxes, as you saw, and this one is their powered door lock module kit. We're not gonna get into this one obviously today because we don't even have our doors installed in this truck, but that'll definitely be another video for another time. All right, let's crack into this box. Right on the top here, we've got the actual push button start. This is their module with upgraded key fobs. I opted for 2 fobs instead of 1. And some very simple and basic wiring harnesses here within the box. So this is the push button start I chose. It's a black push button start with a red halo on it. It's one of the things that actually drew me to this company is they've got probably the biggest selection of push button start switches I've ever seen. From factory configurations to aftermarket configurations like this, you name it, they got it. Another thing that I really like about this kit is the key fob that they give you. This is an actual OEM style heavy duty key fob. It's even got the factory style key that comes out exactly how I have it on my daily driver. These key fobs also have RFID technology that jumps into action as soon as you come near your vehicle. You can also control power windows and of course door locks as we showed you before. You can also add GPS tracking and starter lockout if you want. Not only are these kits expandable to add different options down the road, but they're also multi-vehicle compatible, meaning one key fob can control multiple vehicles. Very cool. All that and more, and also don't forget that the RFID technology gives you the ultimate in theft protection. Sounds kind of complicated to install, right? It's as easy as hooking up those 4 wires to your key switch. So here's the harness that they give you to install this. Right off the bat, we noticed some stark similarities between this harness and our installation wiring coming out of our dashboard from our Speedway universal wiring harness. We can see that we've got red for our main battery constant. We can see that we've got pink for our switched ignition, brown for our accessory, and purple for our starter. The other 2 wires that we see here is black, which is going to be a ground. It's imperative that this system has a ground to operate. So we're going to run a separate ground wire up to that ignition circuit. And then this pink with black stripes is just another accessory feature like our brown wire. So if that sounds confusing, before we get started installing this, let's hop into my actual daily driver vehicle and I'll show you exactly what that second accessory wire does. All right, Chevy guys, don't hate me. I know, but I daily drive a 2020 Ram Laramie 1500. So our key fob is present, and here's our push button start. So with one single push of the button, we get an accessory circuit come on, and that shows some lights in the dash. My seat just adjusted, my radio came on. So that first tap would basically essentially look like initiating the first accessory circuit. Now, if we tap it once a second time, we should notice some additional accessories come on. There goes our chime. Our lights came on. We've got some air blown out of our vents. Now, if we go to start the vehicle, your foot has to be on the brake. And then once we push the start button and hold it down, our starter will engage, but that second accessory circuit will disconnect. There it comes back on. So that second accessory circuit might come into handy if you want to have those other things fire up. If you're just sitting in the car, maybe you want to turn the radio on. Maybe for whatever reason you want to turn the blower on to defrost the windows. Whatever the case may be, but it will also turn off as soon as you go to start the vehicle to not kind of bog down your battery. Just take some load off of it for starting. Make sense to you guys? All right, let's get back to work. So the first thing I did is went ahead and added the second ground wire to my ground terminal right here. Ran it up and around and snanked it down to my ignition harness here, where you can see I have the black wire bundled with everything else. So something else really important, you guys might notice this little tiny pink and black wire here. It is not the same thing. Please do not get that confused. However, that's a really important part of this. That little pink and black wire is coming from my LS engine harness. If you go back to my video where I show you how to wire up this LS engine with harness, with that harness, it only requires 2 wires to make the entire engine run. A pink and black and a gray. The pink and black, which I just showed you right there, is actually our switched ignition wire for the entire system. And the gray wire is for your fuel pump. We've already wired that gray wire up in another video. There's no need to go over that for the sake of this. Only if this is applicable to you and you have an LS engine, you want to bring that pink and black wire up and fuse it and then run it together with the other pink wire that's coming out of our Speedway Racing harness for our ignition. Here is our push button start. It comes complete with its own harness. I just added this black bushing right here because our dashboard is kind of keyed. So to hide that, I'm essentially putting a washer over this area and then installing the push button start through it. So I'm gonna mount the module up under the dashboard. Before I do that, I thought I should mention, they give you this emergency bypass card right here, and under my finger, yes, I'm concealing it because I don't want you guys stealing my truck, but there's an individual PIN number that you can use to bypass the system and start your truck should you lose your key fob or something happens. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing mounted. Just remember, if you guys are installing the system, that obviously this side and this side right here can't go up against the wall or in a corner because they need to be accessible for your harnesses. This side obviously has nothing on it, and then the back side has just this little antenna on there. All right, so I started wiring it up. Here is the ignition harness coming from our dash, and this is the harness coming from the digital guard dog. The first thing we did is hook up the ground wire. We spliced them together using those solder sticks. I'm a really big fan of those. I'll show you those in a second if you haven't seen them already. And they really, really stress that you have to hook the ground up to the digital guard dog system first before you connect any power, or you could damage the whole system. So even though our main power is disconnected, just on precedent, I did go ahead and hook up that ground first as the instructions specify. So make sure if you guys are using the system, you do the same thing with hooking up that ground first. All right, so we are all connected with a bunch of solder sticks. I've left this brown accessory wire from the digital guard dog, because remember that's accessory too that we're not going to use. And I've just put a butt terminal on it for future use. So I'm going to go ahead and bundle these wires up, tape them, and we'll get them stuffed away under the dash. As easy as that, we are tucked away and out of sight. I left my ignition fuse hanging right here in case I have to ever get to that. All right, so we're coming to a really important part of that, which is this little accessory harness here. If you notice, I've just taken out the brown wire from it and I've left everything else coiled up. That's because this is your brake trigger, meaning you need to step on your brake pedal to start your car or truck, and that's what this wire is going to get connected to. This little harness right here from our Speedway Motors harness, you have an orange, a white, and a blue wire in it. Works out perfectly for us because this is an old truck and we're not going to have a third brake light, which is that blue wire. So what we're going to do is the orange wire is your power feed for your brake switch. The white wire is the power feed coming out of your brake switch. The blue wire, again, is your third brake light. So the blue and the white get tied together. And then we're going to take that blue wire somewhere up in here and connect it to our brown wire to trigger our brake safety for our PBS2 module for our push button start. One more time, real simple. The orange wire is going to be your 12-volt constant hot to the brake switch. And then out of the brake switch, when you depress your pedal, it sends the hot signal to your white, and we're going to attach the blue to it together so that they both get the positive brake feed once the pedal is depressed. Now, in a lot of vehicles, you're going to have a brake switch mounted right near your pedal someplace. On this build, we don't. We have a pressure switch coming right off of our proportioning valve, off our master cylinder. As you can see, there's 2 wires here. Essentially, one is going to be hooked to that orange wire, which is your 12-volt feed, and the other wire is going to be coming out of the switch, which is going to be tied to that blue, and the white, which is going to be sending the brake switch signal out. So I'm trying real hard to keep clean engine base. What I want to do, I think, is get a hole drilled somewhere down here under the master cylinder and booster where you can't see it, and then route these wires inside the firewall, or route the brake switch wires if they're long enough out the firewall and connect here to these. Stuff a little grommet in there. That's definitely pretty clean. Don't really see the wire from up here where you're gonna be looking at it. A little bit right there with that braid, but that looks pretty good. So I want to test it now. So let's pop a fuse into our brake courtesy light slot. And so we've got one probe to ground. I'm gonna put the other probe to the hot end of our brake switch light and push the brake pedal. There we go. So our wiring for our PBS2 push button start is nicely tucked away. Our module is secured under the dash. All the wiring is hidden away nice. All right, so we have our key fob here, and I'm gonna go ahead and push unlock. And we have that armed the system, we're ready to go. Now if I push this once, we should hear an accessory circuit come on. If I push it again, we should hear another accessory circuit come on. There goes the ignition and everything. Now, since we have that brake wire hooked up as a safety, once we depress the brake pedal, this should start flashing. There we go, that indicates that the vehicle's ready to start. Just let go and it goes back to solid. So let me wedge my foot in here and see if I can do a demonstration. Hopefully, we depress this, start flashing, we should start. The safety feature should work the same way turning it off. We're going to go ahead and depress the brake. There we go. So technically when I come near the vehicle and I start moving it around, yep, there it goes. It arms the system again, ready to go. So obviously that works great, and installing it really couldn't be any easier. It's just the same as hooking up that basic key switch. In fact, the only way that it differs is you have to hook up that brake wire to give you that safety feature. In keeping with this series about trying to simplify wiring, one of the things about this PBS2 push button start kit that I really like that I've not seen anywhere else is that their instruction manual is actually interactive. So once you go on the website and you click on that manual, it includes a flow chart that shows you all the steps that you have to do for testing it just to make sure that everything's working correctly as it should. And each step that you come to, they're like numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Each step that you come to, if you hover with your finger over that number, if something doesn't work there, it'll light up and then a menu will pop down at the bottom with all the possible things that you could possibly be missing or that you need to check. That'll give you an idea of what you might have looked over or missed. In essence, guys, it's really kind of foolproof to mess this up. The key fob is not cheesy. It's a nice, solid, heavy-duty key fob. I've seen guys put kits in their cars online, and the key fob's like this really chintzy, cheap plastic thing that you feel like if you blow on it, it's going to disintegrate. Not the case with these at all. It feels like a really high-quality key fob that you'd get from the dealership when you bought a new car. The push button options for the actual start button, man, they are endless. They give you all types of options, from actual factory options to these metal style halo ring buttons that I have here on the truck, which also come in different colors as well. So we've still got our headlight switch we've got to install soon, which is another circuit. We've got our steering wheel harness. We've got our engine bay harness over here tucked away to the side. And a lot of the actual engine components we're not going to use since we have an LS engine with its own harness. This is really just going to be for like lights and turn signals and everything up front. We've got some accessory wires for radio and heat and clock, and then the yellow and blue wires are going to be for heated seats. And before you know it, guys, this whole truck's gonna be wired just like that. Wiring is not hard, guys. You can do this, it's easy. If you go back to the first video in this series, it really kind of simplifies the whole concept of it. And I think that's where people get tripped up, is just looking at, 1,000 different wires in a wiring harness, and they kind of panic and they don't know what to do. But I'm telling you guys, if you take your time and you lay out your wiring harness to begin with before you install it, and then once you get it in the vehicle and mounted, you start bundling individual circuits and putting them in the locations where they need to be, it doesn't get overwhelming. You just focus on one circuit at a time. That's what we did here today, guys. We got our brake switch wired up, which was kind of imperative for our push button start, but it's another circuit that you'll need to know how to do anyway when you're wiring your vehicle. And we also got our ignition wired up. We did it with a key switch to show you how simple that was. We took the key switch off and then hooked up our PBS2 from Digital Guard Dawg, which works fantastic. We even showed you where that pink wire that would go from your fuse block into the engine bay would be used if you're using an HEI distributor or an old points distributor system. And this push button start system from Digital Guard Dawg is really super high quality. As soon as you take it out of the box, you can feel it in your hands. It's not chintzy and cheap and flimsy and plasticky feeling. It's just nice and heavy duty. You can tell that quality components were used. And most importantly, I've had to deal with them since this is a sponsored video, but if you want to email them, they're very responsive to it. If you call them, guys, there's an actual body that'll get on the phone and talk to you and give you answers right away, which is super rare these days. I know you guys probably all appreciate that as much as I do. And they make kits for boats, motorcycles, cars, hot rods, you name it, whatever it is, they got it. It's a really cool company with a really cool product. Soon we're gonna get into putting the doors on this vehicle and working on those. And I showed you guys that they gave us the included power lock module kit, so I can't wait to get that installed. The buttons on that key fob remote will control your locks open and closed. This is a really nice kit, guys. I'm super happy with it. I know if you guys are interested in it, you're really gonna love it too. Guys, if you're at all interested in the digital guard dog system, I got great news for you. They have been super cool to us. They have offered us a 20% discount for anyone who's interested. And they kind of did this as a favor to me for my viewers. That's a fantastic opportunity. Take advantage of it. Use the link in my description. Use the link in the comments. It's the same link. It helps me out a tiny bit, but it's really gonna help you guys out a lot. And it's good to use across their entire product line. Whatever the company has to offer, the 20% applies. I told you I was gonna make this easy. I told you I was gonna make it understandable for you guys, and that is my goal. This is about getting you guys to have that feeling of apprehensiveness or nervousness that a lot of people get when it comes to vehicle wiring, and toss that right in the garbage and give you the confidence to know that you can do this stuff. Anyway, guys, that's gonna do it for this video. I really wanna give a super huge thanks to Digital Guard Dog for sponsoring this video. I love this PBS2 system, guys. Thank you so much. And I know you guys will love it too if you install it in your vehicles. We got a lot more wiring to come and a lot more videos in this truck build. So please hit that subscribe button. I can use all the help I can get. And if you don't mind, smash that like button. It really helps the channel way more than you think it does. Anyway, guys, as always, until next time, I'll see you in the shop.